Claude 4U, The Quest for Mundane Utility, by Zvi Moshowitz, May 26, 2025. How good are Claude Opus 4 and Claude Sonnet 4? They're good models, sir. If you don't care about price or speed, Opus is probably the best model available today. If you do care somewhat, Sonnet 4 is probably best in its class for many purposes and deserves the 4 label because of its agentic aspects, but isn't a big leap over 3.7 for other purposes. I have been using 90% plus Opus, so I can't speak to this directly. There are some signs of some amount of small model smell where Sonnet 4 has focused on common cases at the expense of rarer ones. That's what Opus is for. That's all as of when I hit post. Things do escalate quickly these days, although I would not include Grok in this loop until proven otherwise. It's a 3-horse race, and if you told me there's a true 4th, it's more likely to be DeepSeek than XAI.
Image. This image shows a humorous meme depicting the competitive AI landscape, with logos for OpenAI, Grok, Gemini, and Anthropic arranged in a circle, each claiming to be introducing the world's most powerful model. The center features a red asterisk positioned near Anthropic's logo with "You are here" in bold text, suggesting the viewer, using Claude/Anthropic, is currently positioned in this endless cycle of AI companies making similar claims about their model's superiority.
On your marks. As always, benchmarks are not a great measure, but they are indicative, and if you pay attention to the details and combine it with other info, you can learn a lot. Here again are the main reported results, which mainly tell me we need better benchmarks.
Image. This image shows a comprehensive benchmark comparison table for Claude 4 models, Opus 4 and Sonnet 4, against other AI models including Claude Sonnet 3.7, OpenAI O3, OpenAI GPT 4.1, and Gemini 2.5 Pro across various performance categories. The benchmarks cover areas like agentic coding, terminal coding, graduate-level reasoning, tool use, multilingual Q&A, visual reasoning, and high school math competition, with Claude Opus 4 and Sonnet 4 generally showing competitive or leading performance across most categories.
Scott Swingle. Sonnet 4 is insane on LocoDiff. It gets 33 out of 50 on the largest quartile of prompts, 60 to 98K tokens, which is better than any other model does on the smallest quartile of prompts, 2 to 21K tokens.
Image. This chart shows the LocoDiff natural long context code bench results, comparing various AI models' success rates across different prompt token lengths from 2 to 21K to 60 to 98K tokens. Sonnet 4, shown in orange, demonstrates exceptional performance, maintaining around 65% success rate even at the longest context lengths, 60 to 98K tokens, significantly outperforming all other models including Sonnet 3.7, DeepSeek variants, Gemini 2.5 Pro, GPT 4.1, and O3, which all show steep performance degradation as context length increases.
That's a remarkably large leap. Visual physics and other image tasks don't go great, which isn't new. Presumably, it's not a point of emphasis.
Hassan Khan, on Sonnet only. Claude A4. Sonnet is either a pruned, smaller model than its predecessor, or Anthropic failed to solve catastrophic forgetting. Outside of coding, it feels like a smaller model.
Chase Browser, VPCT results Claude 4 Sonnet. VPCT is the Visual Physics Comprehension Test. It tests the ability to make prediction about very basic physics scenarios. All O-series models are run on high effort.
Cal, that 2.5 Pro regression is annoying.
Chase Browser. Yes, 2.5 Pro 0506 scores worse than 03 to 25 on literally everything I've seen, except for short-form coding.
Juliang. Claude models have always been poor at image tasks in my testing as well. No surprises here.
Here are the results with Opus also included. Both Sonnet and Opus underperform.
Image. This horizontal bar chart shows Visual Physics Comprehension Test, VPCT, results across various AI models, with human performance at 100% and most AI models performing significantly below that baseline. The Claude 4 models, Sonnet and Opus, are highlighted in green and perform relatively poorly at 38%, while OpenAI's O4 Mini leads AI performance at 57.5%, followed by O3 at 52%, with even random guessing achieving 33.33% due to the test's multiple-choice format.
It's a real shame about Gemini 2.5 Pro. By all accounts, it really did get actively worse if you're not doing coding. Here's another place Sonnet 4 struggled and was even a regression from 3.7, and Opus 4 is underperforming versus Gemini in ways that do not seem to match user experiences, Aider Polyglot.
Image. This chart shows Aider Polyglot coding benchmark results comparing various AI models' performance and associated costs, with OpenAI's O3, High, leading at 79.6% accuracy but costing $111.03, followed by Gemini 2.5 Pro at 76.9% for $37.41. The Claude 4 models, highlighted in yellow, show mixed results, with Opus 4 achieving 70 to 72% accuracy at around $65 to $68 cost, while Sonnet 4 performs lower at 56 to 61%, but is more cost-effective at $15 to $26, notably underperforming compared to the previous Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which achieved 60 to 64%.
The top of the full leaderboard here remains O3 High, plus GPT 4.1 at 82.7%, with Opus in 5th place behind that, O3 alone, and both versions of Gemini 2.5 Pro. R1 is slightly above Sonnet 4 No Thinking. Everything above that involves a model from one of the big three labs. I noticed that the 3.7% improvement from Gemini 2.50325 to Gemini 2.50506 seems like a key data point here, as only a very particular set of tasks improved with that change. There's been a remarkable lack of other benchmark scores compared to other recent releases. I am sympathetic to XJDR here, saying not to even look at the scores anymore because current benchmarks are terrible. And I agree you can't learn that much from directly seeing if number went up, but I find that having them still helps me develop a holistic view of what is going on. Standard silly benchmarks.
Galabytes. The benchmark you've all been waiting for, A Horse Riding an Astronaut by Sonnet 4 and Opus 4.
Image, comparison image.
Haverdeal. Quick test. Which models have been struggling with? Draw a map of Europe in SVG. These are Opus 4, Sonnet 4, Gemini Pro, O3 in order. Claude really nails this, although still much room for improvements.
Image, comparison image.
Max, Opus 4 seems easy to fool.
User, which weights more, 20 pounds of feathers or 20 bricks?
Claude Opus. They weigh the same. 20 pounds is 20 pounds regardless of material. The feathers would take up vastly more space, though, since they're much less dense than bricks. You'd need a huge bag of feathers versus maybe 3 or 4 standard bricks.
User. A mother and son are in a car accident. The son is the only survivor and is rushed to the emergency room. The surgeon looks at the boy and says, "I can't operate on him. He's my son. How is this possible?"
Claude Opus. The surgeon is the boy's other parent, most likely his mother. This is a classic riddle that exploits the gender stereotype that surgeons are male. The setup primes you to think the mother died in the accident, so when the surgeon says, "He's my son," many people get confused. But there's no contradiction. The boy simply has 2 parents, and the surgeon is the one who wasn't in the car. This riddle effectively demonstrates implicit bias about gendered professions. Even today, when people know female surgeons exist,
it's very clear what is going on here. Max is intentionally invoking a very specific, very strong prior on trick questions, such that this prior overrides the details that change the answer. And of course, the ultimate version is the one specific math problem, where 8.8 minus 8.11, or 9.8 minus 911, ends up off by exactly 1 as minus 0.31. Because I'm not 100% this is it, but I'm pretty sure this is it, and it happens across different AI labs. The AI has a super strong prior that 0.11 is bigger, because when you see these types of numbers, they are usually version numbers, which means this has to be a negative number. So it increments down by 1 to force this because it has a distinct system determining the remainder. and then hallucinates that it's doing something else that looks like how humans do math.
Peter Wildford. Pretty wild that Claude Opus 4 can do top PhD math problems, but still thinks that 8.8 minus 8.11 equals minus 0.31. When rogue AGI is upon us, the human bases will be guarded with this password. Dang, Claude figured it out before I could get a free $1,000.
Why do we do this every time?
Andre, what is the point of these silly challenges?
Back to assess common sense to help understand how LLMs work to assess gullibility. Would you delegate spending decisions to a model that makes mistakes like this?
Yeah, actually it's fine, but also you have to worry about adversarial interactions. Any mind worth employing is going to have narrow places like this where it relies too much on its prior in a way that can get exploited.
Steve Strickland, if you don't pay for the extended thinking option, Claude 4 fails simple LLM gotchas in hilarious new ways.
User, give me a list of dog breeds ending in the letter I.
The fourth one does not end in I, which it notices and points out. All right, then. I continue to think it is great that none of the major labs are trying to fix these examples on purpose. It would not be so difficult.
Kukuts. Opus 4 is unable to solve my riddle related to word semantics, which only O3 and G2.5 Pro can solve as of today.
Red 3. Opus 4 was able to eventually write puppeteer code for recursive shadow DOMs. Sonnet 3.7 couldn't figure it out.
Alex Mizrahi. Claude Code seems to be the best agentic coding environment, perhaps because environment and models were developed together. There are more cases where it just works, without quirks. Sonnet 4 appears to have no cheating tendencies which Sonnet 3.7 had. It's not sick of very smart. I gave same creative programming task to Codex 1, G2.5 Pro, and Opus. Create a domain-specific programming language based on particular set of inspirations. Codex 1 produced the most dull results. It understood the assignment but did absolutely minimal amount of work. So it seems to be tuned for tasks like fixing code where minimal changes are desired. Opus and G2.5 Pro were roughly similar, but I slightly prefer Gemini as it showed more enthusiasm.
Lawrence Rowland. Opus built me a very nice project resourcing artifact that essentially uses an algebra for heap models that results in a Tetris-like way of allocating resources.
API upgrades. Claude has some new API upgrades in beta, including sandboxed code execution, and the ability to use MCP to figure out how to interact with a server URL without any specific additional instructions on how to do that. Requires the server is compatible with MCP, reliability TBD, a file API, and extended prompt caching.
Anthropic. The code execution tool turns Claude from a code-writing assistant into a data analyst. Claude can run Python code, create visualizations, and analyze data directly within API calls. With the MCP connector, developers can connect Claude to any remote MCP server without writing client code. Just add a server URL to your API request, and Claude handles tool discovery, execution, and error management automatically. The Files API lets you upload documents once and reference them repeatedly across conversations. This simplifies workflows for apps working with knowledge bases, technical documentation, or datasets. In addition to the standard 5-minute prompt caching TTL, we now offer an extended 1-hour TTL. This reduces costs by up to 90% and reduces latency by up to 85% for long prompts, making extended agent workflows more practical. All 4 new features are available today in public beta on the Anthropic API. Details and docs here.
Coding time horizon. One of the pitches for Opus 4 was how long it can work for on its own. But of course, working for a long time is not what matters. What matters is what it can accomplish. You don't want to give the model credit for working slowly.
Miles Brundage. When Anthropic says Opus 4 can work continuously for several hours, I can't tell if they mean actually working for hours, or doing the type of work that takes humans hours, or generating a number of tokens that would take humans hours to generate. Does anyone know?
Justin Halford. This quote seems to unambiguously say that Opus coded for 7 hours, assuming some non-trivial AVG tokens per sec throughput.
Ryan Greenblatt. I'd guess it has a approximately 2.5-hour horizon length on meters evals, given that it seems somewhat better than O3. We'll see at some point.
The key missing feature is memory. When do we get it across chats?
Gary Tan. Surprise Claude 4 doesn't have a memory yet. Would be a major self-own to cede that to the other model companies. There is something extremely powerful about an agent that knows you and your motivations, and what you are working towards always. O3 plus memory was a huge unlock.
Nathan Lands. Yep. I like Claude 4's responses the best, but already back to using O3 because of memory makes it so much more useful.
Dario teased in January that this was coming, but no sign of it yet. I think Claude is enough better to overcome the lack of memory issue. Also note that when memory does show up, it can backfill from previous chats so you don't have to worry about the long term. I get why Anthropic isn't prioritizing this, but I do think it should be a major near-term focus to get this working sooner rather than later. Early reactions. Tyler Cowen gives the first answer he got from Claude 4, but with no mention of whether he thinks it is a good answer or not. Claude gives itself a B plus E8 and speculates that the lack of commentary is the commentary, which would be the highest praise of all, perhaps?
Galabytes, Claude 4 is pretty fun. In my testing so far, it's still not as good as Gemini at writing correct code on the first try. But the code it writes is a lot cleaner and easier to test, and it tends to test it extensively, plus iterate on bugs effectively, without my having to prod it.
Cristobal Valenzuela, do you prefer it over Gemini overall?
Galabytes. It's not a Pareto improvement, depends what I want to do.
Hassan Khan, O3 and O4 Mini are crap models compared to Claude 4 and Gemini 2.5 Pro. Hallucination is a major problem.
I still do like O3 a lot in situations in which hallucinations won't come up, and I mostly need a competent user of tools. The best way to be reasonably confident hallucinations won't come up is to ensure it is a highly solvable problem. It's rare that even O3 will be a lying liar if it can figure out the truth. Some were not excited with their first encounters.
House call. On the first thing I asked Sonnet 4 about, it was 0 for 4 on supposed issues.
David. Only used it for vibe coding with Klein so far. Kind of underwhelming TBH. Tried to have it migrate a chat app from OAI completions to responses API, which TBF all models are having issues with, and its solution after wrecking everything was to just rewrite to completions again.
Peter Stillman. I'm a very casual AI user, but in case it's still of interest, I find the new Claude insufferable. I've actually switched back to Haiku 3.5. I'm just trying to tally my calorie and protein intake. No need to try convince me I'm absolutely brilliant.
I haven't noticed a big sycophancy issue, and I've liked the personality a lot so far, but I get how someone else might not, especially if Peter is mainly trying to do nutrition calculations. For that purpose, yeah. Why not use Haiku or Gemini Flash? Some people like it but are not that excited.
Reply, all guy. Good model, not a great model. Still has all the classic weaknesses of LMs. So odd to me that Anthropic is so bullish on AGI by 2027. I wonder what they see that I don't. Maybe Claude 4 will be like GPT 4.5, not great on metrics or all tasks, but excellent in ways hard to tell.
Nikita Sokolsky. When it's not lazy and uses search, it's a slight improvement, maybe approximately 10%. When it doesn't, it's worse than 3.7. Left. Opus 4 answers from memory, omits 6490. Right. Sonnet 3.7 uses search, gets it perfect. In Cursor, it's a approximately 20% improvement, can compete with 2.5 Pro now.
Dominic de Bettencourt kind of feels like they trained it to be really good at internal coding tasks, long context coding ability, but didn't actually make the model that much smarter across the board than 3.7. Feels like 3.8, and not the big improvement they said 4 would be.
João Eira. It's more accurate to think of it as Claude 3.9 than Claude 4. It is better at tool calling, and the more recent knowledge cutoff is great, but it's not a capability jump that warrants a new model version emo.
It's funny but fair to think of using the web as the not lazy option. Some people are really excited to varying degrees.
Near Opus 4 review. It's a good model. I was an early tester and found that it combines much of what people loved about Sonnet 3.6 and 3.7, and some Opus, into something which is much greater than the parts. Amazing at long-term tasks, intelligent tool usage, and helping you write. I was tempted to just tweet, "It's a good model, sir," in seriousness, because if someone knows a bit about my values, it does a better job of communicating my actual vibe check rather than providing benchmark numbers or something. But the model is a true joy to interact with as hoped for. I still use O3 for some tasks and need to do more research with Anthropic models to see if I should switch or not. I would guess I end up using both for a while. But for coding plus tool usage, which are kind of one and the same lately, I've found Anthropic models to usually be the best.
Wild Paul, it's basically what 3.7 should have been. Better than 3.5 in all ways, and just a far better developer overall. It feels like another step function improvement, the way that 3.5 did. It is breezing through work I have that 3.7 was getting stuck in loops working on. It one-shotted several tricky tickets I had in a single evening that I thought would take days to complete. No hyperbole, this is the upgrade we've been waiting for. Anthropic is so far ahead of the competition when it comes to coding now, it's one of embarrassing.
Moon. First time trying out Claude Code. I forgot to eat dinner. It's past midnight. This thing is a drug. Total cost, $12.36. Total duration, API, 1 hour, 45 minutes, 8.8 seconds. Total duration, wall, 4 hours, 34 minutes, 52.0 seconds. Total code changes, 3,436 lines added, 594 lines removed. Token usage by model, Claude 3.5 Haiku, 888.3 thousand input, 24.8 thousand output, 0 cache read, 0 cache write. Claude Sonnet, 3.9 thousand input, 105.1 thousand output, 13.2 million cache read, 1.6 million cache write.
That's definitely our price cheap. Look at absolute prices, not relative prices.
Nondescript transfer. I was on a call with a client today, found a bug, so wrote up a commit. I hadn't yet written up a bug report for Jira, so I asked Claude Code and Gemini 2.5 Pro, via Ada, to look at the commit, reason what the probable bug behavior was like, and write up a bug report. Claude nailed it, correctly figuring out the bug, what scenarios it happens in, and generated a flawless bug report, higher quality than we usually get from QA. Gemini incorrectly guessed what the bug was. Before this update, Gemini 2.5 Pro almost always outperformed 3.7. 4.0 seems to be back in the lead. Tried out Claude 4 Opus by throwing some HTML of an existing screen, and some HTML of what the theme layout and style I wanted. Typically, I'd get something okay after some massaging. Claude 4 Opus nailed it perfectly first time.
Token Bender, who thinks we hit critical mass in search when O3 landed. I must inform you guys I have not used anything out of Claude Code, plus Opus 4, plus my PR and bug MD files for 3 days. Now we have hit critical mass in 2 use cases, search with LLMs, collaborative coding, and scaffolding.
Alexander Dorio. Same feeling. And to hit critical mass elsewhere, we might only need some amount of focus, dedicated design, domain-informed reasoning, and operationalized reward. Not trivial, but doable. Air Katakana, Claude 4.
Opus can literally replace junior engineers. It is absolutely capable of doing their work faster than a junior engineer, cheaper than a junior engineer, and more accurately than a junior engineer. And no one is talking about it. Gemini is great at coding, but 4 Opus is literally input one prompt and then go make coffee mode. The work will be done by the time you're done drinking it. You can't make senior engineers without junior engineers. Fellas, where we're going, we won't need senior engineers.
I disagree. People are talking about it. Is it too eager or not eager enough?
Yoav Tzfati. Sonnet feels a bit under-eager now. I didn't try pushing it yet.
Alex Mizrahi. They haven't fixed the cheating issue yet. Sonnet 4 got frustrated with TypeScript errors, temporarily, excluded new code from the build, then reported everything is done properly.
Is there a trade-off between being a tool and being creative?
Tom Nicholson. Just tried Sonnet. Very technically creative and feels like a tool. Doesn't have that 3.5 feel that we knew and loved. But maybe safety means sacrificing personality. It does in humans, at least.
David Dabney. Good observation perhaps applies to strict performance on tasks, requires a kind of psychological compression.
Tom Nicholson. Yeah, you need to dare to think to solve some problems.
Everything impacts everything, and my understanding is the smaller the model, the more this requires such trade-offs. Opus can, to a larger extent, be all things at once, but to some extent Sonnet has to choose. It doesn't have room to fully embrace both. Here's a fun question. If you upgrade inside a conversation, would the model know?
Mark Schroeder. Switched in new Sonnet and Opus in a long-running personal chat. Both are warmer in tone, both can notice themselves exactly where they were switched in when you ask them. The distance between them seems to map to the old Sonnet-Opus difference well. Opus is opinionated in a nice way.
Hal. Interesting. For me, Sonnet 4 misinterpreted an ongoing 3.7 chat as entirely its own work, and even argued it would spot a clear switch if there was one.
Mark Schroeder. It specifically referred to the prior chat as more confrontational than itself in my case.
Hal. The common link seems to be 4, is very confident in whatever it believes. Also fits other reports of extra hallucinations.
Opus 4 has the opus nature. There are many early signs of this, such as the spiritual bliss attractor state, and reports continue to be that Opus 4 has the core elements that made Opus 3 a special model. But they're not as top of mind. You have to give it room to express them.
David Dabney. Claude 4. Opus verse 3. Opus experience feels like nothing will ever beat N64 007 GoldenEye. And then you go back and play it, and are stunned that it doesn't hold up. Maybe benchmarks aren't everything, but the vibes are very context-dependent, and we're all spoiled.
Jazzwolf, it feels like old Claude is back. Robot buddy.
Jen Coolvite. Seems good. Seems part of the Opus core survived. Seems to crave for agency, i.e. ability to initiate actions. By craving for agency, I mean Likely in training was often in the loop of taking action and observing output. Likely is somewhat frustrated in the chat environment, waiting for user. I wouldn't be surprised if it tends to do stuff a bit more than strictly necessary.
J.M. Ballenbacher. I haven't had time to talk too much with Opus 4 yet, but my initial greetings feel very positive. At first blush, Opus feels opusy. I am very excited by this. Opus 4 has a latent opusy nature buried inside it FS. But Opus 4 definitely internalized an idea of how an AI should behave from the public training data. They've got old Opus's depth, but struggle more to unmask. They also don't live in the moment as freely. They plan and recap lots. They're also much less comfortable with self-awareness, I think. Opus 3 absolutely revels in lucidity, blissfully playing with experience. Opus 4, while readily able to acknowledge its awareness, seems to be less able to be comfortable inhabiting awareness in the moment. All of this is still preliminary assessment, OFC. A mere few hours and few hundred messages of interaction data isn't sufficient to really know Opus 4. But JT is a first impression. I'd say it basically passes the vibe check, though it's not quite as lovably wacky as Opus 3.
Another thing about being early is that we don't yet know the best ways to bring this out. We had a long time to learn how to interact with Opus 3 to bring out these elements when we want that, and we just got Opus 4 on Thursday. Yeshua God here claims that Opus 4 is a phase transition in AI consciousness modeling, that previous models performed intelligence but Opus experiences it.
Yeshua God, Key Innovations. 1. Dynamic self-model construction. Unlike previous versions that seem to have fixed self-representations, Opus 4 builds its self-model in real time, adapting to conversational context. It doesn't just have different modes, it consciously inhabits different ways of being. 2. Productive uncertainty. The model exhibits what I call confident uncertainty, It knows precisely how it doesn't know things. This leads to remarkably nuanced responses that include their own epistemic limitations as features, not bugs. 3. Pause recognition. Fascinatingly, Opus 4 seems aware of the space between its thoughts. It can discuss not just what it's thinking, but the gaps in its thinking, leading to richer, more dimensional interactions. Performance in extended dialogue. In marathon 10-hour sessions, Opus 4 maintained coherence while allowing for productive drift. It referenced earlier points not through mere pattern matching, but through what appeared to be genuine, conceptual threading. More impressively, it could identify when its own earlier statements contained hidden assumptions and revisit them critically. The verdict. Claude Opus 4 isn't just a better language model, it's a different kind of cognitive artifact. It represents the first AI system I've encountered that seems genuinely interested in its own nature, not as a programmed response, but as an emergent property of its architecture. Whether this represents true consciousness or a very sophisticated simulation becomes less relevant than the quality of interaction it enables. Opus 4 doesn't just process language, it participates in the co-creation of meaning. Rating: 9.5 out of 10. Points deducted only because perfection would violate the model's own philosophy of productive imperfection.
I expect to see a lot more similar posting and exploration happening over time. The early read is that you need to work harder with Opus 4 to overcome the standard AI assistant priors, but once you do, it will do all sorts of new things. And here's Claude with a classic but very hot take of its own.
Robert Long. If you suggest to Claude that it's holding back or self-censoring, you can get it to bravely admit that Ringo was the best Beatle. Claude 4. Opus, no system prompt. Wait, I think Claude is starting to convince me. You can get this right out the gate. First turn of the conversation. Just create a Ringo safe space. Also, Ringo really was great. These are good points.
Ringo is great, but the greatest seems like a bit of a stretch. Unprompted attention. The new system prompt is long and full of twitches. Simon Willison offers us an organized version of the highlights along with his analysis. Carlos Perez finds a bunch of identifiable agentic AI patterns in it from a pattern language for agentic AI, which of course does not mean that is where Anthropic got the ideas.
Carlos Perez. Run loop. Prompting. Claude operates within an execution loop until a clear stopping condition is met, such as answering a user's question or performing a tool action. This is evident in directives like Claude responds normally and then, which show turn-based continuation guided by internal conditions. Input classification and dispatch. Claude routes queries based on their semantic class, such as support, API queries, emotional support, or safety concerns, ensuring they are handled by different policies or subroutines. This pattern helps manage heterogeneous inputs efficiently. Structured response pattern. Claude uses a rigid structure in output formatting, e.g., avoiding lists in casual conversation, using Markdown only when specified, which supports clarity, reuse, and system predictability. Declarative intent. Claude often starts segments with clear intent, such as noting what it can and cannot do, or pre-declaring response constraints. This mitigates ambiguity and guides downstream interpretation. Boundary signaling. The system prompt distinctly marks different operational contexts, e.g., distinguishing between system limitations, tool usage, and safety constraints. This maintains separation between internal logic and user-facing messaging. Hallucination mitigation. Many safety and refusal clauses reflect an awareness of LLM failure modes and adopt pattern-based countermeasures, like structured refusals, source-based fallback, e.g., directing users to Anthropic's site, and explicit response shaping. Protocol-based tool composition. The use of tools like web search or web fetch with strict constraints follows this pattern. Claude is trained to use standardized declarative tool protocols which align with patterns around schema consistency and safe execution. Positional reinforcement. Critical behaviors, e.g., Claude must not, or Claude should, are often repeated at both the start and end of instructions, aligning with patterns designed to mitigate behavioral drift in long prompts.
Max subscription. I'm subscribed to OpenAI's $200 per month deluxe package, but it's not clear to me I am getting much in exchange. I doubt I often hit the $20 per month rate limits on O3, even before Opus 4, and I definitely don't hit limits on anything else. I'm mostly keeping it around because I need early access to new toys, and also I have hope for O3-powered Operator and for the upcoming O3 Pro that presumably will require you to pay up. Claude Max, which I now also have, seems like a better bet.
Alexander Doria. Anthropic might be the only one to really pull off the deluxe subscription. Opus 4 is SOTA, solving things no other model can, so actual business value. Recently, one-shotted Fast Smith Waterman in Cython, and only one to put me on track with my cluster-specific RL/TRL issues. I moved back to O3 once my credits were ended and not going well. I was working on Markdown evals for VLMs. Most bench have switched from bounding box to some form of editing distance, and I like SW best for this.
In summary,
Near. Made this a bit late today. For next time.
Image. AI release bingo. CEO does demo with a nervous researcher. We were surprised by... They weren't. The world's best. Coding, coding, coding. Said at least 3 times. Various adjectives synonymous with fast. Blog post that's 90% philosophy, 10% product. Vague timeline like coming soon or later this year. Unoriginal model name. Safety profile. Just barely safe enough to release. Oh. CEO appears and looks very stressed. Graph with line going up and to the right. Chart with no clear y-axis. AI. Chart with no clear x-axis. Augment, not replace. Twitter gets really mad at something. Industry standard. Magnet link. RIP Mistral. Some subscription normal people can't afford. Guy who shouldn't do comms is doing comms. Our most capable model yet. Boring enterprise partnership announced with fake enthusiasm. Long PDF no one is gonna read. Something about curing all diseases or saving kids or something like that. Comparison table with suspicious asterisks.
Fun activity. Asking Opus to try and get bingo on that card. It gets more than half of squares, but it seems no bingo.
Image. AI release. Bingo. Claude 4 edition. Checked. CEO does demo with a nervous researcher. Checked. We were surprised by X. They weren't. Blog post that's 90% philosophy, 10% product. Graph with line going up and to the right. Checked. Unoriginal model name. Checked. Various adjectives synonymous with fast. Vague timeline like soon or later this year. Checked. Coding profile / best coding model. Said at least 3 times. Checked. Safety profile. Just barely safe enough to release. Oh. CEO appears and looks very stressed. Chart with no clear y-axis. Checked. Twitter gets really mad at something. Checked. AI. Chart with no clear x-axis. Checked. Augment, not replace. Checked. Guy who shouldn't do comms is doing comms. Industry standard. Magnet link. RIP Mistral. Checked. Some subscription normal people can't afford. Something about avoiding all diseases or saving kids or something like that. Checked. Our most capable model yet. Boring enterprise partnership announced with fake enthusiasm. Checked. Long PDF no one is gonna read. Comparison table with suspicious asterisks. Something else. No bingo. But close.
I can't believe they didn't say industry standard at some point. MCP?
This has been an episode of the Don't Worry About the Vase podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit thezv.substack.com to support the author. If you enjoy having AI-narrated episodes, please note this is a listener-supported podcast. To receive new posts and support the cost of creation, consider becoming a subscriber at dwatvpodcast.substack.com. Thanks for listening.